7:51 through the magic of radio. We're going to go to Moscow. ABC News correspondent Kirit Radia. Kirit, thanks for joining us here on the Big 550 KTRS in St. Louis.
Good morning. How are you?
All right. Did Putin have an address this morning yet?
Yeah, he had actually a heck of an address. It was about an hour long and very defiant, in which he basically thumbed his nose at the White House's threat to impose more sanctions if he goes ahead with the annexation of Crimea, essentially saying that Crimea has been, is, and always will be part of Russia. And to punctuate that, after the speech, he sat down and signed the treaty accession deal with Crimean officials. That will have to go through some additional bureaucratic steps, including ratification by lawmakers and approval from a constitutional court before it goes into full effect. But you can be sure that if that decision has been made at Putin's level, it's as good as baked.
Let's go back for a second. Let's talk about this vote that they had. Was this a legitimate vote of the people, by the people?
Well, if you talk to the Russians, they certainly think so. If you talk to the United States, for example, they see a number of problems with it, not least of which was the fact that there were Russian troops stationed all around that created the atmosphere of, if not a threat to people, but the atmosphere that there was a threat to the people from the outside that they needed to protect them from, which I guess the United States and its allies say did not exist. That was fabricated by the Russians, and that was how would you say, was also put forth in propaganda that was put out on television, essentially convincing people that there was a fascist threat coming from Kiev to get them. So from that perspective, the West does not think that it was a free vote. But I will say that 53% of the people in Crimea are ethnic Russian, and I think in all likelihood any referendum probably would have approved it anyway.
Well, propaganda from the government seems to be running rampant, whether it's in Russia or in the United States. So I don't really. Well, the point is this, though: are the people inside Crimea who are claiming that there were stuffed ballot boxes? That this was? Are there UN inspectors who gave this the seal of approval as a legitimate election?
No. I mean, international observers and so on, no. Nobody was there to do that. I think there were some U.S. officials who were trying to put out the figures, essentially, that if they were to have, in order to arrive at the figure that they did, which was some 96% of the vote in favor, you would have needed over 100% of the population voting. So, that's all the math that I think you have to really sit down and do to validate that. But certainly there's plenty of people suggesting that there were some inaccuracies there.
Yeah. Now, what happens with the Ukraine? Because the interesting story about the Ukraine is they gave up their nuclear weapons with a deal with Russia saying, we'll give up our nuclear weapons. You are never allowed to invade us. Are people worried about that now?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing that everybody was saying, especially U.S. officials pointing out that this was part of the deal back in, I think it was 94. You bring up exactly the question, which is what happens now? Does Putin try to make a grab in eastern Ukraine, where there's also a sizable pro-Russian and Russian-speaking population? And in his speech today, Putin essentially said that they want a unified Russia, which would suggest that perhaps they don't want to do this. But he did say that there will be Russian speakers in Ukraine in the future, and that Russia will always have their interests in mind. So I guess some sort of warning that they still reserve that right.
Mikhail Gorbachev, who is very friendly to the West and I think has a pretty good public relations campaign here in America, came out in favor of this move?
Well, he did, but I got to say it's a pretty widely popular move in Russia. I think most people here do feel like Crimea was and is part of Russia. Like I said, 53% of the population there is ethnic Russian, and until 1954, it was part of Russia. So, they feel this bond with the Crimean people, and again through, like we said, some of the propaganda. There was this sense that they were under threat, and that their brother, their countrymen, as they call them, were under threat, and so there was, quite a bit of support here for that.
Kirit, you're in Moscow. What are the people saying on the street about the U.S. and the Western allies not happy with what's going on? What's their thoughts about the U.S.?
I think they're taking a lot of their cues now from President Putin, who essentially in his speech today said that it doesn't matter what they think anymore. It was a very, like I said, defiant speech that laid out a strong, robust policy for Russia that was not going to, stand for what he called Western double standards anymore. And he listed a litany of grievances that he had against the West. Philly felt like a man getting a lot off his chest, to be honest with you, talking about things like missile defense plans and NATO expansion onto what he called our native lands.
Was he wearing a shirt during this address?
He was wearing a shirt, jacket, and a tie. Yes.
All right, good, fair enough. There is a G8 summit coming up in Sochi, correct?
There is, yes.
And is that still on? I mean, that's going to be an interesting summit if they still have it, right?
Yeah, and that's sort of that's something to look forward to. The United States and the other countries of the G8, which would call themselves the G7, have warned that they could potentially kick Russia out. I think Putin has said that well, if you want to go ahead and do that, go ahead and do that. He sort of brushed it off. He would regret it, but whatever. And I think that's really where we are right now. Is that it's a Putin that is not going to back down and has calculated the risks and the costs of doing so, and has decided he's okay with that.
Kirit Radia is an ABC News correspondent live via Moscow. Kirit, be safe, and thanks for checking in.
Thank you.
You got it. 7:58 here, Big 550 KTRS. Well, you don't get any better than that. Straight from Moscow with crystal clear technology. Tim.